This was the third Imperial archive I had raided. Thankfully, the files in this one were alphabetized. I thumbed through the S's, I passed through the SR's, and stopped at ST. The pace at which I thumbed through these files slowed asymptomatically as I grew closer to my target. It almost felt like a ritual at this point. A ritual leading infinitely into nowhere. My hand stopped, frozen on the spot. Stola. It was her. It had to be her. My hand shook, but I opened the manila envelope. Belle Stola. A lead weight in my stomach seemed to have vanished after reading her name. The physical description matched. The background details matched too. They even had my name, Sable Lockhart, as an important contact with a big red stamp. Whoever compiled this did their research. The lead weight in my stomach returned when I saw the photograph and paperclip to the edge, which certainly looked like her, but something was off. She had a dead look in her hazel eyes, a fatigue that reached bone deep, hiding beneath that golden hair of hers. Her freckles seemed painted on, artificial. Everything about her looked just sadly wrong in a fundamental way. I heard stomping in the distance, the shaking of the ground, and the fluorescent lights along with it let me know an enemy mech was approaching, and fast. I stuffed the envelope in my bomber jacket and raced out the door back to my own mech. Termite stood outside the cramped archive room, hunched over just as I had left it. Termite was a patchwork monstrosity. It was a civilian frame at heart, with layers and layers of extra plating and battery packs haphazardly stapled on. There was an industrial grinder grafted to the left arm, and a crude, improvised railgun grafted on the right like a parasite. It was a bit of a wreck. As above, so below, I suppose. Its reactor still thrummed, even in standby mode. The battery arrays crackled with barely contained power. I leapt up and climbed it. One of the many benefits of the termite's small stature was how easy it was to mount and dismount. It was about half the size of most mechs. Termite was designed for backline infiltrations and sabotage. It kept me alive even as the rebellion died in this part of the country. I was by no means the best pilot to ever walk this earth, but I was very good at staying alive. No one called you a hero for just surviving, and there was no glory to be had deep behind enemy lines, sabotaging industrial supply chains. I didn't do it for validation. I did it because it was necessary if I wanted to see the world envisioned in my dreams come to fruition. I didn't need validation to feel good. Besides, nothing made me feel good like the way being ensconced within my mech did. It was the kind of assurance you could feel in your bones. The solidity of steel, sensors beyond human cognition watching every angle, a torrent of information coming in to give you superhuman awareness of all possible threats. And of course, weaponry that could put a hole through the celestial firmament. I switched everything on, one by one, in the proper startup sequence. Sensor confirmed that a power signature was screaming down the wide, empty hangar bay right towards me. Audio confirmed it as well. And optics? Optics had more specific information. I saw the gleaming twin blades first, reflecting the harsh overhead lighting. Then the mech hand gripping the center of the staff, delicate, mechanical fingers imbued with the perfect dexterity to wield such a weapon. Then the rest of the mech, a wiry thing that glided like a kite despite the still air. When it rains, it pours, I suppose. Belle had arrived in her own mech, Amber Stahl. As if the file clutched close to my sweating body had summoned her. I could hear the twin blade edges at the tips of the staff vibrating, as the electricity pumped into them caused them to shake and wail. As much as I wanted to see her again, as much as I wanted to know why she and so many other pilots had gone turncoat, I knew that none of that would matter if she tore me apart, here and now. The rumors had congealed into truths. Rebellion heroes vanished one by one and started showing up, fighting under Imperial banners. If I died in this hangar, I'd never figure out why so many heroes of the Rebellion had gone rogue and fought for the Empire they once swore to defeat. I knew Belle. I knew her deep in my bones. She wouldn't willingly fight for the Empire, the same Empire that threatened to swallow our lives in our youth. I also knew that I wouldn't be able to take Belle in a fair fight. She was a prodigy. Maybe not God's gift to the Rebellion, she was no Arthur Thrace, but a whole lot of people had hoped she'd be the next best thing one day. And honestly, I thought she could do it. She moved like she was the wind speaking the name of your lover and the elites. She tore Max apart like how fish swim. It was as easy as breathing. She could have grown into a war-stopping terror. She could have become a whirlwind of death, but she was cut down in her prime, only to be mysteriously resurrected like other great pilots of note. Even now, in a nascent state, ever on the cusp of horror and greatness, she was leagues and leagues better than me. I'd never beat her. Even if I didn't love her, I'd never be able to beat her. I wrenched the throttle back and started moving in a full-scale retreat. That'd only buy me a minute of extra time, but it could be the difference. Amber Stahl was faster than my termite on account of sheer size. She could simply cover more distance with each stride, and each stride was a river bouncing across the babbling brook. I charged up the railgun mounted on Termite's right arm. The pressure from the massive capacitator gave me the slightest headache as per usual. I whirled around and fired a payload of Fléchette. Amber Stahl immediately leapt into the air, turning parallel with the ground. She whirled around like a cyclone, twin blades sparking as they collided, with the shrapnel flying at her. She landed and skidded across the cement floor towards me. She whipped the edge of a twin blade staff towards me. I parried with my left. Termite's melee ability resided entirely upon the industrial mulcher mounted on his left arm. Giant, grinding, toothed cylinders roiled and shed sparks as Amber Stahl's vibrating lead zircon titane blade staff vibrated its menacing hum of annihilation, neither yielding to the other weapon. I reached forward with my railgun, now close to being recharged, and went to press it against Amber Stahl's abdomen, but as I reached out, Amber Stahl twisted out of the way. It lifted its right side up, bringing the blade staff and my mulcher high into the air. Simultaneously, the left edge of its blade staff whipped down onto my railgun, slicing the tip clean off. I'd have to relearn how to fire the damn thing, and the spread was assuredly way off, more akin to a sawed-off shotgun than a high-tech shrapnel catapult it was. Instead of another pointless attempt at a point-blank shot, I hefted the remains of the cannon up and boxed it against Amber Stahl's head. I discharged the massive capacitator as the cannon made contact. The sudden, catastrophic discharge surged through Amber Stahl, overwhelming its circuits momentarily. It was stunned, but only for a precious few seconds. I disengaged. I turned and sprinted for the hangar door I had entered from. I didn't need to look back to know that Amber Stahl, that Belle, was hot on my trail. I dove for the gash in the hangar door that I had torn through to get in originally. I gripped it with both hands and wrenched myself through. The screaming, vibrating blade chased me through the gash as Amber Stahl was too big to fit. I ducked the stab and bounded off into the night. Deep within the ruins of the city, I eventually returned to a collapsed bridge over a dried canal. I parked Termite underneath it, taking care to curl it into itself and obscure it behind debris as much as possible. There was a hiss as the cockpit opened. I climbed down and nearly fell flat on my face as I aligned to the ground. I instead ambled over to my tent. I collapsed only when I had aligned my drained body over top the sleeping bag. Face pressed against the floor, I pulled the manila envelope out of my jacket. I pulled the photograph out from there and held it in one hand. I traced the tip of her index finger along the surface of the photograph, even as my vision blurred beyond uselessness from the growing stream of tears. Cool summer nights like these were always the hardest. It was just like the day I first met her, deep within the bowels of an imperial factory. She took my hand and all but dragged me out when the overseers weren't looking. We snuck away under cover of night. I held her for warmth and she held me back. We walked to the nearest clearing, a deserted patch of weeds on a rocky hill. It was exposed, high up in the air above any dust storm that might roll through. Even back then I was thinking of sightlines. I guess that part never changed. It was the exposed air that drew Belle to the spot though. We could see the stars, especially when the factory shut down for the night. We sat in silence for ages before she finally said something to me. I couldn't stop thinking about what you said to me earlier. I looked at her, confused. The mechs we assemble in the factory, that we are just like them and they are like us, made in our image and we are made in theirs. She turned away from the stars to look at me. I want to change that image. At first I was scared. I knew how to survive, how to get by unnoticed, how to become a part of the background, but Belle knew how to thrive, how to become more of herself, how to cross that infinite divide and meet herself on the other side. That was the first thing she taught me, and perhaps the most important, that mere survival was not enough. We were both scared little boys back then, but she could see the bigger picture. She always could. We met on that semi-green hill for years. We traded secrets. We traded our hearts, slipping them between each other's ribcages like modular mechs rearranging power cores. I told her my real name when I eventually found it between the pages of a book. It first belonged to a daring pirate captain, bold and resilient, ever just beyond the reach of the Imperial Navy's grasp. She navigated by starlight and always found her way. She fought and stole and drank and fucked, and she never died. Captain Sable Lockhart was everything to me then. I first kissed Belle when she found her own name. It still tasted sweet on her lips. It always did. Like the first night we truly met. She spirited me away from the factory, from the city, from the borders of the Empire. Belle was a horizon, always retreating. Sometimes I struggled to keep up with her. We joined the rebellion together, burdened with the weight of realizing her vision unfold. I watched her bloom into the pilot she is today, into the woman she is today. I was always right behind her, and she knew I'd be at her back as long as she kept moving forward. Orpheus be damned. Belle could have saved me. Did save me. I put Belle's photograph down. It was my turn to save her now. I had to, considering what I'd done to her.